Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts, and I guess this time also spaghetti western enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things Giallo here on The King and Giallo, and we are doing another unscripted talking head movie review. This time, it is for the 1972 spaghetti western Giallo hybrid, maybe? Kill the Poker Player, also called Creeping Death. This is directed by Mario Bianchi, stars Robert Woods. We also have Frank Braña and Nieves Navarro, billed as always as Susan Scott. Okay, so this is featured in episode 24, Forgotten Giallo film series I did, 1972 part 3, along with, so it's Kill the Poker Player, Devil in the Brain, and Who Killed the Prosecutor and Why. So this is the first one covering those 3 films. So Wikipedia says that this is a Western film, so that means... let's do it. Okay, so again, so Wikipedia does say that this is a Western film, but I found this in Troy Howard's book, So Deadly, So Perverse, 50 Years of Italian Giallo Films. There's also a handful of other spaghetti Western Giallo hybrid films he has in there. This, I think, is the 3rd or 4th one I've covered so far, going from the early 60s, the inception of Giallo, into right now at 1972. So this is like 3rd or 4th, but this is the first one I actually watched. The spaghetti Western movie I covered months ago was not a Giallo in any way, shape, or form. That was just directed by Luigi Bazzani, who did The Fifth Chord and did The Possessed and did Footprints on the Moon. Although some people, well, one person said that it's not a Western because it doesn't take place in America. Although, because it's still in Spain, it's not technically a Western. Like, I don't actually think that's a written rule of the location, because some would say they have to be in the American Southwest. And then it's like, okay, what about all of them that are in the antebellum South? What about the ones that are in the Rockies and Colorado and Utah? What about anything that's in the Dakota Territory? What about the Zapata Westerns that take place in Mexico during the Revolution? And also, if they didn't say that they were in Spain trying to get to America, you wouldn't know. Anyways, I'm getting off, but yeah, that was just a little gripe I had, where it's like, again, why are we being gatekeepers here for silly things? But this movie, okay, so this is the first spaghetti Western Giallo that I had the luxury, the opportunity to actually watch. I promise this time I won't go deep. I'm not going to give you a play-by-play of the plot. I will tell you that you can find this on YouTube. There's at least 3 uploads of the full movie. All you have to do is type in Kill the Poker Player 1972. I don't even know if you need to type in full movie, but it'll pop up. There's a Film and Clips Western page. There's a Django one, Gringo Django. I forgot what it's called, but there's that one. There's another one. You can check it out. I'm trying to think how I should begin this. I guess I will start with how Giallo is this hybrid. I believe Troy Howarth even said this, that it comes up in lists. It's not like he just declared this is a Giallo, get used to it. It comes up in some lists because of the mystery element. So what happens is there is a bank robbery that happens early in the movie. One guy holds up a bank, and then there's 2 other guys, like one guy's in a saloon and one guy's up in a window, like kind of sniping, just making sure nobody interrupts this operation. They rob this town, they leave, one of the gunmen kills the other 2 with a snake. I'll get to that. That is really funny, but kills the other 2. And then we have this guy, Jonathan Pinkerton, which again, that's such a like hitting the nail on the head type of thing. He is an employee of Lloyds of London, and he is coming to investigate this robbery. And so through the course of him coming to the town, he knows he's looking for this 3rd man, because they have the bodies of the other 2, and they don't know who the 3rd person was, because in the course of the robbery, like, anybody who was a possible witness was murdered. So we don't know who this person could be. He's going around, he's interviewing people, talking to them, trying to figure out who it could be. And we meet people at the saloon, we meet the sheriff, we meet the guy who's kind of like the de facto mayor. Don't believe he actually is the mayor, but he kind of seems like, how these old frontier towns are, where someone just kind of like owns the most, so therefore they're in charge. I think that's kind of what's going on there. He has a cattle ranch, I believe. But anyways, so how Giallo is it? It's hard for me to also judge this on the basis of being a Western Giallo hybrid, because this is the first one I've seen. I know there's Price of Death. I know there's Ringo, It's Massacre Time. I think there is another one before this one. And then there's, I think, a few more after it. It's like this. I would not say that this is necessary viewing for a Giallo completionist, but like I've said before with some of these movies, when you get to a point where you're kind of running out of stuff to watch, or you're having difficulty tracking down some of these rarer, harder to find films, this movie is available, so check it out. I would say though that yeah, it's more necessary viewing for someone who is a spaghetti western completionist. So the movie is not bad. There's a lot of stuff in the movie that is hilarious. And unintentionally, that's just terrible. Like I said, the snake. One thing that I will say, okay, a few things I will say about this. I am not the go-to opinion on spaghetti western films. I probably own anywhere between 12 or 15. I wouldn't say any more than 20, but the vast majority of those are Sergio Leone, Sergio Corbucci, and God, I forget who some of the others might be. I do own a fair amount. I've seen a fair amount. I haven't seen a lot of the deep cuts, but I've seen a lot of them. I say that to say my opinion on this is like I kind of know the vibe, the genre, the everything. I also, like I've said, I've also owned several Zapata westerns, which are deeper cuts, but I'm not anywhere as deep into this genre as I am with Giallo films. So it's not like I've seen 50 plus 100. Spaghetti westerns really did take off in the 60s, and by the 70s they really were dying. So that's kind of funny in terms of Giallo. They started and they had this infancy, this what would you call it, the stage where they're the embryos, and then it really kicks off in the 70s. Spaghetti westerns, it's like they kind of burst onto the scene. Well, they did have a really slow infancy stage, and then they burst onto the scene, and then really quickly I think people were just getting sick of them. I don't know exactly what the reason was for the decline, but by the time you get to the 70s, you really don't see a lot of them, or if you do, you're seeing mostly the cheap knockoffs that nobody talks about. Again, I'm not the expert, but from what I can tell, when people talk about spaghetti westerns, you're not really going to find anybody giving you any of them from the 70s, unless it's Trinity. And that's a comedy. That's a spoof. I do love Trinity. But it's not like Giallo films where you'll still find someone giving you a few from the 80s. The 90s, not so much. 2000s, not so much. So yeah, I think Giallo did have a longer lifespan. They just would not let the genre die. But I say that to say that I personally will be hard pressed to tell you that there is a not bad, but a great spaghetti western in the 70s that's not Trinity. Like I said, I'm not the best person for that, but for me, it just kind of seems like everything really great was in the 60s. That being said, there is a lot of stuff in this movie that is a little derivative of the 60s spaghetti westerns. There's a lot of, it does feel like at a certain point, how can you not emulate, rip off, steal, homage, whatever word you want to use for it? There's no way you can't replicate Sergio Leone or Sergio Corbucci and the things that they did that made the genre stand out. At a point, you have to just realize, okay, well, crash zooms, the standoffs where we're just kind of cutting to different people's faces. It works because it works, and so there's no reason to fight against the tides. If it works, it works. That being said, it still does feel fairly derivative of other films I've seen, but it still stands out on its own. It's still unique. The one thing that did jump out to me initially was the sound effects. So the first, I'll say first 10 minutes, but it's not quite that long, but it's mostly in silence. There is a brief scene with the main character where he's passing by these two people fooling around in a wagon, a guy and a girl, and they're just kind of ripping their clothes off, and he's like, hey, where's town? And they're like, that way. And he's like, ah ha ha, these kids having fun. But after that, it's all of these scenes with no dialogue, and you're seeing the bank robbery, the escape, you're seeing then the killing of the two other robbers with the fake snake. And then we get a scene with the sheriff, and we introduce him, and he guns down this, I guess he's a Mexican gangster. His name is Indio, which I thought was funny. Again, a callback to Sergio Leone. There's a great shootout over the rocks with great gunfire sound effects. And then he surrenders himself, and they gun him down, and it's revealed that he did have a gun in his back of his belt, but he wasn't really going for it. I will say that was one of the things that really did stand out to me watching it, was the Foley sound effects were really good. And like I said, there was just a lot of instances of no dialogue, but it wasn't silence. It was always kind of filled with some sound. Like there was a standoff sort of between the three robbers in the desert when the one guy rides in, and I think they're not sure if he's safe or not. And you're just hearing all this animal sounds, which was really cool. The music on its own was fine. The acting was good. The writing was fine. There was some stuff that was got a little silly, a little repetitive. Everybody who doesn't like this Pinkerton guy, they keep calling him Mr. London, which I thought was, it was kind of funny, but it was also just like, is that all you guys got? That's kind of stupid. But the movie does give us a fair share of brawl fights. There's a bar brawl while there's a poker game going in the next room. We have another one where it's always the main guy, Pinkerton, getting jumped. And so there's one scene where he's getting jumped by these 4 guys after like a church service. And that fight is way more comical. It's with the music and the way that he's knocking them into like buckets of water. The snake. So yeah, let's talk about this snake. There's a character we meet early on in the town who is a doctor, and he's also a zoologist, and he is trying to find an antidote to the snake. And so there will be shots where we see real snakes in glass cages, and then when we see this fake snake, it's if you get this reference, it looks like Reptilicus. It looks like a snake puppet on a string that's like, it's so bad. It's so bad. And the fact that they like focus on it for so long is crazy. It's crazy to me how, like, if I was filming this and I was editing it, I'd be like, that looks like shit. We can't show that. Unless it's this unique species of snake, but there's enough times in the movie where they'll cut to a real snake and then cut to this where it's like, okay, it's not as if this puppet snake is a crazy unique species, because they will show the real snake. Anyways, it comes up a lot and it is pretty funny. Other than that, does the title make sense? Well, I will say Creeping Death is a more apt title for this movie. It just kind of fits it more. Kill the poker player. Who's the poker player? When was that a scene? When did that happen? It just doesn't really fit. And you hear that title, you think going into it, oh, there's going to be like this person was killed at a poker game, or a renowned poker player was killed or something, and they're pivotal to this mystery. No, there was some weird reference to someone being a poker player in like the climax, but it still doesn't justify the title. Yeah, I'll be honest there. The Creeping Death was a more suitable title. Frankly, let's be real. A lot of Giallo titles, it's kind of like they're selling the movie on the title. They're not quite using the trailer to sell the movie. They're selling it based off of the title. Sometimes it seems. And some titles, they fit it in the weirdest way. Some titles, if you really think about what happens in the plot, it works. So, for example, $5 for an August Moon. Some people may say it doesn't make sense as a title, but when you watch the movie and you kind of think about who the dolls are, you're like, okay, it kind of works. It's kind of poetic. When you get to a title like Iguana with a Tongue of Fire, they say that in the movie, and it's the dumbest, most forced thing where the guy is saying, I don't even remember how he says it, but he just says something is comparable to an iguana with a tongue of fire. And nobody talks like that, dude. So, like, you said that because the script needed you to say it so they could justify putting that title on the poster. Okay, so I'm going on. This is one thing I do want to talk about. This is the last thing I'll say. Maybe I should have talked about this sooner. There is a part in this movie that doesn't work the way I think they think it does. So Pinkerton, this guy who we find out later is actually a federal. He's a federal agent, but he's going under the impression of, I work for Lloyds of London. Now, if you are familiar with Lloyds of London, they're not quite an insurance company. It's a weird thing. You have to look it up. It's so odd, but they are in the business of spreading risk for banks and sort of insuring them. If Lloyds of London ever does come up, it came up in one of the previous jobs I had. They work with banks. They work closely with banks. Okay. I'm sure they do more, but you hear them come up. If you're not an expert on what they are, that you can at least hedge your bet that, okay, this has got to do with banks. So this guy comes by claiming with this story that he was sent across the pond from London to America, and now he's in the American West at this small town, and he's claiming that he's here to investigate a robbery. Okay, even if we didn't see the bank robbery, and you hear someone say that, I'm from Lloyds of London, they sent me to investigate a robbery, What are you thinking? What are you thinking he's referring to? So he's talking to this guy, the guy who kind of is the head honcho in town, and the guy says to Pinkerton, trying to earn his trust, well, I can assure you that I'm not in the habit of committing bank robberies. And he says, oh, I'm sure. I'll see you later. By the way, I must tell you. And then it does like a zoom on him. And he's like, I never said it was a bank robbery. And then it cuts to the other guy, like, oh, he's a little nervous. That is so stupid. I get what the movie is trying to say, where it's like, oh, he didn't say it was a bank robbery, but that guy filled in the gap. He said it was a bank robbery. It's like, why would Lloyds of London send a guy to look after their interests if this was a robbery of a general store, or a robbery of a cattle ranch, or a robbery of gold from a army base? It has to be a bank. It was just the dumbest thing. It's like, he really thought you got him there. But if you think about it, it's like, what else why would they send you if, maybe they actually did, but I don't think so. So anyways, that is all I've really got to say about the movie. I enjoyed it enough. Is this a movie that I would buy, that I would own? Probably not. Maybe I'll change my opinion when I see more of these Western Giallo hybrids, but for me, it didn't really feel enough like a Giallo. I'm not saying it's not, but it just felt like a Western. It just felt like a spaghetti Western, and not a bad one, but like I said, one that is fine. A lot of spaghetti Westerns, they kind of are at a baseline of they're good. It's really hard for me to find a spaghetti Western that's, oh, that one was terrible. Because at the end of the day, you're still getting shootouts, you're still getting good music, you're still getting good action. It's kind of like a lot of horror, a lot of slashers, where as long as you can kind of enjoy yourself, you're watching some life or death, high stakes type things, and yeah, forgive me. But anyways, this would be so odd if this was picked up by Arrow or Vinegar Syndrome or any of those others, but I mean, if they did, I might be like, all right, I'll get it. But yeah, other than that, I don't really feel the need to. But check it out. Like I said, it's not bad. I wouldn't really say it's great, but it's fine. It's fine. Anyways, so that's all I've got to say. Have you heard of Kill the Poker Player, aka Creeping Death? Have you seen it? If you have, leave your thoughts on the movie in the comments below. If you haven't, it's on YouTube. Go ahead and check it out. Let me know what you think. Do you think it is a Giallo? Anyways, thank you for watching the whole thing. Even though I didn't go deep through the plot, I still kind of blabbed a lot. Sorry, it's just how I am. Anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for making it to the end. Thank you for subscribing. And if you're not, consider subscribing. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.
Stand up. Thought you could pull it off, huh?
I still think I can.